Could you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do for WHE?
Okay, so my name is Rosa Baranda. I'm Spanish. I'm from the north part of Spain, and I'm the Spanish editor of the encyclopedia.
Nice. And when you say that you're the Spanish editor, what does that mean? What do you do?
Okay, so mainly I do translations from English into Spanish, but then I also review the translations that the volunteer translators do, and then just publish them on a schedule every week.
Right, okay. And you say on the schedule. What kind of schedule is that? What are you looking at?
So at the moment, we're publishing at least one article per day.
Okay.
I do try, if there's like lots of translations at the same time, to publish more than one, because on the one hand, obviously the readers are always happy to have more, and then the translators are also happy to like see that the work is reviewed and it's
Mm-hmm.
not just waiting there for weeks and weeks before it gets published.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Ah, yeah, so you make sure that there's essentially a steady stream of translations coming out.
yeah, yeah.
Mm?
I think it makes both ends of the work happy, because
Yeah.
like from my experience as just a translator, it's always nice to know that there's somebody there that's actually taking care of it. It's not just sending to the ether and who knows what's happening after. So yeah,
For sure, for sure. So did you started out as a translator for us?
yeah. I started in 2020. I'm not sure exactly when. I think it was around like May, June,
Okay.
because I was looking for some other kind of volunteer work. I had been working for a different websites, but I wasn't too happy with the process precisely because they didn't really take care of the translators.
Ah, okay.
So I thought I'd look into something else, and then I found the encyclopedia, and I really like history. I'm not a historian, but I find it very interesting, and I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity, and I think it's just built up from there. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay. And how did you come to say, "Oh, I want to translate"?
I don't know, like I've always liked translations ever since I was little, because like I'm from the Basque country in Spain, so obviously we study Basque since
Mm.
we're like 6 years old, I
Oh,
think.
wow. Okay.
And
So you
then
speak
we
Basque as well?
a little. I
Okay.
understand better than I speak it, but yeah. And then we study English as well since like a young age. So like there's always been this like a few languages around, and I find them like so fascinating, like how you say things in one way or
Mm-hmm.
another, and how because obviously you use words to think. So like the way you divide reality, like you organize things in your head in one language or another. I find it so interesting. So that was always a passion of mine. And then yeah, I went to university. They didn't want me in the translation study, so I
Ah,
ended up doing English. But yeah, I loved it. And then yeah, and then afterwards, later on, I did a master's in translation because I thought it was important to like get a better idea of how to do proper translations
right.
and what the tools are and what the techniques are and things like that. So
I see. Okay, yeah. And so if somebody wants to volunteer for us to translate into Spanish or any other language, I presume, um, do they need to be translators, professionals, or could anybody do it? How do you feel about that?
um, I mean, I'm happy to welcome anyone as long as they realize that knowing two languages is not the same as being a translator. Like I know a lot of people that have not studied translation at all, are not professionals, but are good translators.
Mm-hmm.
The other way around as well,
Okay.
somehow. So yeah, I think everybody is welcome as long as they pay attention to what they're writing and making sure that what the original says and what the translation says are, if not exactly equivalent, at least have the same meaning.
Yes, yes, of course.
So
When you translate, do you find that sometimes you need to adapt the text a little bit to make it more understandable for Spanish readers?
yeah, yeah, I think especially in the case with English and Spanish, I think it's funny because they are very similar languages when it comes to grammar,
Okay.
but there are important differences. And when you're translating, especially if you're going a bit like automatic, it can sound very much like a translated text
Okay.
because like there's things that technically are right in Spanish, but they don't sound natural at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those things you need to pay attention to. So like sometimes we need to change things, yeah. And then names of like battles and places and people and things like that. I think yeah, it's important because some of them as well are like very different. It's like a few years ago I was translating a text about the I forgot the name in English, the Malvinas Islands,
Oh yes.
in like off the coast of Argentina, and that's like
The
two
Falkland
completely
Islands,
the
right? Yes.
Falklands, yeah.
Yes.
It's two completely separate sets of names for everything.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
Yeah. That makes
yeah,
sense.
things
Of
like
course.
that, you
Yeah.
know. Sometimes they sneak up on you in history, yeah.
Yeah.
And you think, oh yeah, this is this, and it's like, oh no, we don't call it like that apparently.
That makes sense. Of course. Yeah. Are you looking for more translators at the moment? So if people want to translate, is that a good time to come in and start translating for WHE? Or?
I think it is. We have a few translators at the moment, but not a lot of people is super active all the time.
Okay.
So we do get quite a few translations regularly, but I think it'd be nice to have more people because you know more translations, more work,
Yeah.
more published for everything for everyone. So yeah, definitely.
Oh, great. Yeah. And you said that you've always been also interested in history. What is it about history that you find so fascinating?
I just find it interesting to know like, where we come from in general, and like a lot of things that I've been learning like the last few years with translating for the encyclopedia is to realize that you know we have evolved and we've got a lot more technology and obviously societies have evolved, but the basis of it all we're still the same.
It's true.
It's not there's changes, but like the essence, I think we're still the same people now than we were like 5,000 years ago, and I find that mind-boggling.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the people in ancient Sumer, they had the same problems as us, and they were just as clever. They just had less technology, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that, I find. Yeah.
Mm.
And why do you think history is important for our world today? Because all around the world, history and humanities, social studies budgets are getting cut in schools. And why do you think it matters?
Well, precisely because it helps you understand the world a bit better and how things work, how governments work. I mean, I don't know much about politics, but if you know how people have been, I don't know, like manipulated in the past, how you know one governor or one presents things one way when
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not that way, and it just helps you make sense of what you see around you nowadays. I mean, it's always difficult, and with the internet and all the fake news and everything that goes on nowadays, I think it's very difficult to understand things. Well, yeah.
Mm.
And another thing as well is that throughout history, like what I see coming from like a worker background is that the people on top are always trying to manipulate the rest of us again. Oh no, the problems are the immigrants, or the problems are this or the things like. No, it's the rich people. It's always the rich people, and I think history helps you see that
Right, yeah.
like through history there's always this tendency to like divide the population so we don't rise up.
It's true, yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, you can see it everywhere in the world, right? Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you feel like history might be studied from your experience, of course, studied or viewed maybe differently in the Spanish-speaking world to the English-speaking world? Are there any differences in how maybe it's interpreted or how it's valued?
I think in Spain nowadays, like I cannot really speak for Latin America, but in Spain nowadays, like the Civil War was almost 100 years ago, but then the dictatorship was on for 40 years, and obviously I was born after that,
Hmm.
but I think like there's effects still in society. Like obviously my parents' generation, they grew up in the dictatorship, so
Right.
it's not something you're gonna forget from one day to the next, is it? And I think the Spanish society, even if we don't wanna acknowledge it, we're still very divided
Okay.
between like the left and right, generally speaking.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that yeah, that affects how you study history and how you understand it. And obviously, English speaking world is gonna have a different view on things.
To finish, would you have a message for our readers, maybe our audience, our viewers, about history, about World History Encyclopedia, life, anything really?
I think yeah, let's read more of our articles and tell your friends about it because I think it's very important, especially like you say nowadays, to even if it doesn't seem absolutely relevant for like your day-to-day life, I think it's easier to give you a background to understand what's happening. So keep
Well,
on reading.
thank you. Perfect.